What options does the United States have with Afghanistan? And what options does the Taliban have? And did you see President Trump's interview with Sean Hannity? I miss him. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance.
In case you missed the interview that President Trump did with Sean Hannity, I encourage you to watch it. Former President Trump. He gave a lot of inside information as to what deal he had working with the Taliban for the Americans to leave. And the deal that he had, that Joe Biden said, I inherited this and I had to do it, that's not the same deal. President Trump spoke to the leader of the Taliban more than once and basically threatened him. Said, look, here are the terms of our departure. And if you do not abide by these terms, we will bring devastating, swift punishment against you. Do you understand? Pause. He threatened him. Now, of course, President Biden, his staff are saying there's nothing we can do. That's a lie. You understand that we have drones right now that are flying over Afghanistan. We know where many of the terrorists are. We know where many of the leaders are. And we could drop a missile on their forehead. Yes. If we were to attack the Taliban right now, there's no way that we could kill only Taliban. There would be civilian casualties. No question about it. So let's talk at this from several different angles. And what I'm about to share with you is the combination of my years of experience in broadcasting, but perhaps more importantly, my years of study of Islam and Islamic terrorism. Okay? As I mentioned the other day, I have a master's degree in international diplomacy with a concentration in international terrorism. Most of my master's degree work is in Islamic terrorism. So I know what I've read. Thousands of hours of study. The U.S. has a lot of options. Virtually all of them President Biden is unwilling to use. Now, just think with me. We abandoned the Bagram Air Force. So there's air base. There's a base not far from Kabul, the capital of Afghanistan. We literally, in case you did not know this, in the middle of the night in early July, threw the light switch, unplugged the electricity, disabled the electricity, and left. They took all the gear with them that they could take, and without saying a single word to the Afghan forces, our allies, we picked up and left. Just left in the middle of the night. No goodbye. It was a couple hours before the Afghans even figured out that we were gone. And they came to an abandoned, huge Air Force base, our main base. And then, of course, the Taliban took it over. The U.S. could say to the Taliban, we're going to take back that base right now. We suggest that you leave. We need it to land aircraft to get people in and out. They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. They could say to the Taliban, we're going to open up a corridor through the city where we can bring Americans. Because right now, as we know, we believe, and what the government is telling us, is that there are between 10 and 15,000 Americans in Afghanistan, many of whom, God forbid, most of whom, do not have safe passage to get to the airport. So even if we control the airport in the capital, the fact that we don't control the roads means that American citizens right now are completely at the mercy of Taliban at various checkpoints that have been set up throughout the city. And if they don't speak a common language with the Taliban, imagine Americans walking up saying, I'm an American, I want to get to the airport. What do you think is going to happen to them? So another option that we would have, as I said, is to just make sure that we have secured the airport, the one that we currently have, and widen the perimeter, and then tell the Taliban we're going to make passageways through the city for Americans to come. And if you harm us, we will bring swift and devastating retribution. We have the firepower, we have the technology, we have the soldiers. What we don't have is the political will. We don't have the political will. So I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, I will begin to explain the options that the Taliban has at their disposal, all of which would work under Islam. You have to remember, the Taliban takes its military blueprint, its diplomatic efforts, all of it, from Muhammad's life and the life of his immediate companions and the first four caliphs, the rightly guided caliphs, okay? That is what they do. That's their blueprint. They can adapt the blueprint to modern technology, but the blueprint does not change. That's what they're looking at. So if you want to know what options the Taliban is considering right now, all you have to do is study Muhammad's life and the life of his immediate successors, and you're going to find their blueprint. It's pretty simple. It's all they've done for 1,400 years. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the program, friend. When Muhammad began preaching in Mecca, he was in his early 40s. It was around 600 to 605 AD, the year of our Lord. I'm sorry, it was around 610. He was born in 570, and he died in 630. He was peaceful. He was in Mecca. He was preaching. He was monotheistic. He hated idolatry. He preached against idolatry. He had read to him, he was illiterate, but he had read to him the Old and New Testaments. And you will see in the Quran many echoes of biblical themes. In his Meccan years, he only had about 200 converts total after years of preaching in Mecca. And he had his life threatened repeatedly because his worldview and his religious view would have meant the financial collapse of Mecca, because Mecca was the home of multiple gods, probably, well, it depends on what number you read, but lots and lots of gods. So inside of the Kaaba, inside of that area, the sacred area where the black stone now is, that was the home of hundreds of idols, and people from all over the Arabian Peninsula and even outlying areas would come in and worship their idols there. And Muhammad condemned the idolatry. This idolatry brought in enormous sums of money to the city of Mecca, and the leaders of Mecca hated Muhammad because he wanted to destroy all their idols. But he had no military force. He had no one that was willing to fight with him. He fled Mecca for his life and barely escaped with his life and went to Medina. It was in Medina that he began to be a military force. And after his first major battle, it was called the Battle of Badr, B-A-D-R, that is when he turned to violence and terror and kidnapping and hostage taking and ransoming and execution, because it worked. And basically, in the last 10 years of his life, he was able to convert most of the Arabian Peninsula at the point of a sword. I'm getting way ahead of the story, but what I wanted to let you know was that the Taliban will use any area of Muhammad's life as an example to them and marching orders to them for them to duplicate what Muhammad did, right? Christians say, what would Jesus do? A Muslim says, what would Muhammad do? Well, they have the written record. They will mimic it. So after the Battle of Badr, there were a lot of Meccan hostages taken. Mecca sent out a force of about 1,000 people to find Muhammad and kill him and to destroy his followers. Muhammad had about 300 men in battle. The Meccans had about 1,000, and the Muslims routed the Meccans, and a bunch of hostages were taken. Among those taken hostage were two people in particular. One of them was like a poet. They were both executed. because they had mocked Muhammad back in Mecca. So the Taliban right now will look for people that have spoken against Islam or even who have spoken against the Taliban, and they will execute them. That will happen. Just trust me. And it will be very precise. It will be individuals who there's a personal vendetta against and a record that they spoke out. Media personnel who have spoken against the Taliban, who are still in Afghanistan, they will view it as a personal affront and an affront against Islam. They will find these people and they will kill them. Another option that the Taliban has is hostage taking for money. Now, most of the hostages that were taken at Badr ultimately were released after their wealthy friends and neighbors and family in Mecca paid the ransom to get them out of custody with the Muslims in Medina where they were being held hostage. We have 10 to 15,000 Americans behind enemy lines right now who are completely dependent upon the mercy of the Taliban to let them through. There are discussions right now inside of the Taliban looking at the Battle of Badr and looking at other of Muhammad's key battles, asking, should we start taking hostages to redeem them? That is one of the things that they are discussing because it's part of the blueprint. They already may have some American hostages. Another option that the Taliban has is to show goodwill and to let out of the city, let from behind the checkpoints, let them into the airport. But they may have 50 or 100 or 200 Americans already in custody. You can bank on the fact that they have some already because we have no way of knowing. And, the last call out of an American might be, they're pounding on my door. Maybe they leave a message with someone in the State Department. Maybe they get somebody in the State Department. Do you think that the State Department is going to tell the media or tell us right now that there are Americans being held hostage? No, of course not. It would cause unthinkable panic among the Americans and the people that are there, and it would cause consternation and anguish and anger and rage here in America. So if there are hostages being held right now, our government is not going to tell us. They might tell us in 3 days. They might tell us in 3 weeks. So hostage taking for money, that's an option. Letting people go as a matter of goodwill. One of the cities that Muhammad conquered, my memory is that there were about 300 families. And they were all taken hostage and they were being distributed as slaves, sex slaves, etc. And the daughter of one of the chiefs of the city was really, really beautiful. I mean, a head turner. The Quran, or rather the Hadith and the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Ishaq, says that all men who saw her were astounded at her beauty. She recognized that there was no way out and that her entire city was going to be lost and they were going to disperse all the people as slaves. She went to Muhammad and offered herself as a bride. And Muhammad said, "Very well, I accept." And he married her almost immediately. This meant that the rest of the people of her village, who many of them would have been relatives of hers, that they were now family. And so, literally, according to the records of Islam, all of the people who were hostages and who were becoming slaves were set free. And Aisha, the young child bride who you've heard of, in her memoirs, verbal memoirs that were written down, she said never had one woman done so much for her people. Aisha also said that the moment I saw her, I hated her because she was so beautifully said. She said, I knew that the Prophet would want her for himself. So Aisha had this rage of jealousy come over her as a teenage girl, but also recognized later in life that what that woman did by offering herself basically as Muhammad's concubine, I mean, this is a forced marriage, that it ended up freeing all the rest of the people of that town. They were free to become Muslims. I mean, they weren't free to practice their religion or to live their lives outside of Islamic law, but at least they weren't becoming slaves and sex slaves. So the Taliban has, am I over by that much? Oh, okay, then I go to take a break. The Taliban has the option of just letting all these people go because Muhammad did, but Muhammad got a bride out of the deal. So I don't know that there's anybody on the ground that has that kind of leverage capability with the Taliban. But it is an option for them. It is an option. They also could be looking at what happened in Mecca. I'll tell you about that when I come back. Don't go away. Welcome back, friend. So in Mecca, when Muhammad had the city surrounded, there were only a handful of people that he ordered to be executed, to be killed on sight. And those were people that primarily had either apostatized or had mocked him. He took the city and he said, I'm going to spare everyone, just stay in your home. And then he had them come through one at a time and swear political allegiance to him. So an option that the Taliban has is to get people who are there, who are Afghanis, to swear political allegiance to them. And then they don't have to be killed. With the foreigners, therein lies the problem. The Americans, as I discussed on our last program, they're part of, unless they're an American Muslim, but the Americans are part of Dar al-Harb, the House of War. They're the infidels. And the Taliban would be permitted to show mercy to the infidels, but they would be hard-pressed in their minds. And the reason is because so many of the stories around Muhammad, especially regarding battle, cities taken by force, Muhammad after the Battle of Badr, Muhammad changed. People are like, oh, I read the Quran. There's a lot of peaceful places in there. Yeah, that was all before Badr. One of the problems with the Quran is that it is not a chronological book. It's a book where the big chapters are at the front, the medium chapters are in the middle, and the little chapters are at the end. That's how they decided to order it. So when you're reading chapter 2, and some of the revelations Muhammad got were put together, some that were Meccan, where they were peaceful, and some that were violent after Badr are put together in the same chapter. So it can be very confusing to people. But Muslim scholars have long debated, well, was this a Meccan or was this a post-Badr revelation? They debate it, but a lot of them are self-evident because the calls to violence in the Quran came after the Battle of Badr. So the problem is that Muhammad's great successes happened with force, with violence, with terrorism, with terror. So they would be hard-pressed to find illustrations in Muhammad's life where they have the sword to the throat and they have the ability to hold a hostage, they have the ability to kill an infidel, but they just say, go ahead and leave. It did happen. It happened with the Jews. They did allow one Jewish tribe. They said, leave us all your wealth and whatever you can carry on your back. And I think they allowed one camel for every 2 people. Whatever you can carry out, you can take. You can't take any swords, but they let them go. And the trade-off was the Jews got to keep their life and basically what they got, they could carry on their back. And the Muslims got all the wealth that was left behind. So there are illustrations of it. At the end of the day, the discussions that are going on right now are revolving around this exact thing. What do we do based upon what Muhammad did? I'll be right back. Welcome back, friend. The time goes fast. I invite you to call the phone number that you see on your screen, 877-851-WORD, and you can order Muhammad in his own words. It's a 90-minute documentary for a gift of any size, okay? If you want to get the 20-part series, which is like a master's degree study of Islam and Islamic terrorism and the life of Muhammad. It's 4 DVDs, 20 parts. It's called What Would Muhammad Do? You can also call the same number. All right, and ask them. Say, hey, I'll buy What Would Muhammad Do? I'm really flexible, people. We don't do this for the money, okay? We do it to change hearts and to change the course of history. Say to them, I'll buy the What Would Muhammad Do? And would you please just give me for $1 or whatever the documentary, Muhammad in His Own Words. If you want to understand Islam, you must study the life of Muhammad. And that's what I have done. I've put together these DVD series, this documentary, in a way that literally no one else has done. I know because I've studied this. You know, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed is king. So I've taken a lot of time and thousands of hours of research, an enormous amount of time, hundreds of hours of production. Please get it. God bless you.